She didn't leave because you weren't enough. She left because she figured you out. In her world, certainty doesn't feel safe. It kills curiosity. She didn't long for perfection. She longed for intrigue. And you, my friend, became predictable. The mystery was gone. The world doesn't reward loyalty. It respects restraint. And the greatest restraint you'll ever learn is self-control. You were taught to be kind, to give without limit, to love fully, and to expect nothing in return. They said goodness would win her over, but they were wrong. Machiavelli wouldn't mock you out of cruelty. He'd laugh because he understood something. Most men don't. Power isn't given, it's taken, and it's taken by those who master their inner world. She didn't pull away because you lacked value. She pulled away because you were always there, too accessible, too open, too easy to read. You weren't a mystery. You were a solved equation. And what's predictable can be controlled. And what's controlled can't be desired. That spark in her eyes that once made you feel invincible, that wasn't love, it was instinct, the primal dance of contrast. But you never learned the rhythm. You mistook her curiosity for commitment, her testing for affection. Machiavelli once wrote, "A ruler need not be good, only survive." And survival isn't about earning approval. It's about becoming unshakable, not hardened, not indifferent, but calm, rooted, steady. In the quiet tension between men and women, power doesn't belong to the loudest or the strongest. It belongs to the most unreadable, the man who doesn't fold, who doesn't over-explain, who doesn't seek to prove his worth, because worth is not proven, it's lived. Women aren't drawn to emotional disarray. They're drawn to self-possession, to the man who feels deeply but doesn't unravel, who speaks only after silence has served its purpose, who reveals parts, not the whole. Most men want so badly to be seen. They rush, they overshare, they flatter too soon, reveal too much. Every action quietly says, "Please like me," but nothing ends attraction faster than need. You thought you were being romantic. To her, it looked like surrender. She didn't walk away out of malice. She left because, on a deeper level, her instincts told her, this man is centered around me, not himself. And that doesn't feel like devotion. It feels like risk. No one told you this. Attraction isn't built on constant access. It's built on tension, not in what you reveal, but in what you protect. Your presence should feel valuable. Your attention should feel earned, because anything freely given is quietly discarded. You don't need to be cold, but you must be intentional. You don't have to disappear, but you do need to act with purpose, because when she looks at you, she's not just seeing your face, she's assessing your foundation. Is he steady? Is he driven by impulse or grounded by purpose? And if she senses your world revolves around her, she'll retreat. Not out of spite, but because something in her understands. A man who bends too easily breaks even faster. Machiavelli didn't write about love. He wrote about leadership. But his lessons apply to you. If you don't manage your emotions, someone else will. And once she sees she can control your inner world, the desire to stay connected fades. Not because she's cruel, but because you handed her something she was never meant to hold. Part 1. When she tests you, be the wall, not the mirror. She won't tell you she's testing you. She won't have to. Her silence will. Her absence will. The change in her tone, the longer pauses between replies, the sudden cold where warmth once lived, that's the test. And most men fail it. They chase, they explain, they panic, they fold. Not because they're bad men, but because they've made her comfort their center instead of their own stability. But you must be different. When she pulls back, she's not asking, do you care? She's asking, can you hold your frame? She's not trying to hurt you. She's trying to find you. She wants to see how you respond when the room goes cold. Do you shrink or do you radiate from within? You thought she was losing interest. You believed you had to win her back, but this was never about attraction. It was about balance. Every woman, whether she realizes it or not, is searching for something beyond charm, leadership, not control, not ego, but the quiet, unshakable strength of a man who leads himself. He doesn't beg for clarity. He stays calm when things get tense. He doesn't abandon his values to keep peace. He holds steady. He breathes. He remains. She isn't looking for another reflection. She's surrounded by men who echo her moods, match her words, adjust themselves until they disappear. That's not strength. That's erosion. And she doesn't feel it as love. She feels it as burden, because when you become her mirror, you make her carry the structure. But she doesn't want to lead. She wants to lean. Only if what she leans on doesn't crumble under pressure. So when she goes quiet, don't rush to fill the silence. When she steps back, don't lunge forward in panic. Hold the line, not to manipulate, but to show that your center isn't built on her approval. It's rooted in your own purpose. Her distance isn't a door closing. It's a scan. She wants to know, will you abandon yourself to hold on to me? The moment you do, you become replaceable. A man who molds too easily can't be trusted when life becomes uncertain. And life, whether she admits it or not, always brings uncertainty. Machiavelli would call this what it is, a loyalty test, not hers to you, but yours to yourself. And most men fail, not because they're weak, but because no one taught them. Emotional strength isn't shown through words. It's shown through stillness. She doesn't need your poetry. She needs your presence. You don't need to explain who you are. You just need to show her that you won't fall apart trying to prove it. Because if she can shake you, she can never truly trust you. And what she seeks isn't submission. It's stability. So when the air gets cold, don't perform, don't plead, don't protest. Stay grounded, stay calm, stay whole. And in that quiet, she won't see distance. She'll see strength. Not the loud kind, but the kind that doesn't flinch. Not the loud kind that demands attention, but the kind that builds cathedrals, the kind that endures storms. Because in the stillness, she sees the one thing that makes her feel secure in a chaotic world, a man grounded enough not to be shaken by doubt. Part 2. Approval is a drug, and you've been hooked. You didn't pursue her out of love. You pursued her because deep down you were starving, not for connection, but for validation. You needed her gaze to reassure you that you exist, that you matter, that you're enough. That's not love. That's dependency. If Machiavelli lived today, he wouldn't judge you. He'd caution you, because any man who anchors his worth to someone else's validation has already surrendered his throne. But this didn't begin with her. It started long before, when you were taught that being good meant being agreeable, that being liked meant being secure, that being chosen was a man's greatest achievement. So you adapted, you performed, you smiled through the discomfort, said yes, when your whole being screamed no. You listened more than you spoke, gave more than you received, muted your truth just to keep her satisfied. Each time you did, you weren't offering love. You were negotiating, trading fragments of yourself for a sense of worth. Because approval is emotional heroin. 1 dose and you feel alive. 2, and you begin to forget who you were. 3, and you're desperate, burning out just to remain close to her. Not because she asked, but because you believed being chosen made you real. But here's the hard truth. Approval is leverage. Once she senses your need for it, she doesn't need to respect you. She can manage you, not out of cruelty, out of instinct, because people control what they don't admire. They use what they don't fear. When you offer up your identity in exchange for acceptance, you stop being a person. You become a product. You've seen it. The man who lives to please, waits by the phone, reshapes his thoughts to fit hers, apologizes for being an inconvenience, says, whatever you need, before she even asks. That man doesn't spark desire. He drains it. He doesn't ignite her interest. He exhausts it, because she doesn't want a man revolving around her like a moon. She wants a sun, burning from his own energy. Machiavelli didn't write about romance. He wrote about power, and power, at its core, comes from detachment, especially from the need for approval. You think her validation will make you whole, but what you really need is your own. If your worth rises and falls with her gaze, you're not a man. You're a mirror, reflecting what she wants, hoping she doesn't turn away. But she will, not because she stopped loving, but because there was nothing behind the reflection. No substance, no strength, no fire. Just glass. Part 3. The power of emotional control, stillness over reaction. Understand this clearly. No woman can complete you. She can only enhance what is already whole. If you approach her from a place of emptiness, seeking identity through affection, you'll be met with silence. Not because she lacks compassion, but because your worth was never something she could give you. Stop chasing validation. Break the cycle. Reclaim your sense of self. You weren't born to audition for love. You were born to embody strength, not through arrogance but through calm confidence. Love is not a performance, it's a presence. It doesn't beg, it walks forward, even without applause. Emotional control is not silence, it's intentional restraint. It's the difference between a spark and a steady flame. One flashes, the other sustains. Every man experiences emotion, but few are able to contain it. Many let it spill, anger flares, tears come too quickly, attachment grows too intense, and then wonder why she pulls away. It's not because they're broken. It's because they were never shown how to manage the fire within. Society tells men to open up, to share their feelings. But what's often left unsaid is this: emotion without structure erodes rather than builds. Machiavelli once wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But fear without self-control leads to chaos, and chaos doesn't earn respect. It provokes resistance. Real power, the kind that quiets a room without a single word, doesn't come from being loud. It comes from presence, and presence is forged through composure. You may think passion keeps her close, but ungrounded passion quickly fades. It excites, then drains. Because she doesn't need a man who feels everything. She wants a man who feels deeply and still chooses what to reveal. She's drawn to the man who can grieve and still move forward, who can feel anger and still choose calm, who can love deeply and still remain composed. That's emotional discipline. Not emotionless, not detached, but cultivated. And yes, she will test that. Not to play games, but because it's instinctual. A woman's nervous system is attuned to sense instability, not through words, but through subtle cues. She hears it in the pitch of your voice, the speed of your reply, the hesitation behind your "I'm fine." And when she detects disorder, she distances herself, because if you can't manage your own emotional state, how can you possibly support hers? So be the man who feels the storm and still chooses his response, not reactive, but deliberate. Not because you're cold, but because you're in control. You don't broadcast your pain, you refine it. You don't chase desire, you carry it with confidence. You don't pour out sadness. You hold it with quiet dignity until someone proves worthy of its depth. This isn't suppression, it's maturity. Because while intensity may capture her attention, it's your steadiness that earns her trust. She doesn't want to carry your emotional turbulence. She wants to feel secure in your steadiness. If your emotions mirror hers, she'll feel isolated, but if yours ground her, she'll lean in. So the next time she sends emotional waves, silence, storms, or tests, don't collapse, don't chase, and don't erupt. Remain steady, present, unshaken, not because you don't feel, but because you do. And you've chosen how and when to reveal it. That's masculinity at its peak. True strength isn't about denying emotion, it's about mastering it, so it no longer controls you. And when she sees that, when she knows your core is unmoved, she breathes easier. Not because she wants to dominate you, but because she finally feels she doesn't need to. That stillness, that grounded presence, that unwavering calm. That's the man she remembers, the one she respects, the one she follows. Not because he demanded it, but because his presence said it all without saying a word. Part 4. The strategic power of unpredictability. The man she stops desiring isn't the one who failed. It's the one she figured out, not because he lacked depth, but because he revealed too much of it too quickly, too often. You believed consistency created connection. You were taught that being available every day, always replying, always showing up, was proof of commitment. But what you really built was predictability. And to her, predictability doesn't feel secure. It feels lifeless. Attraction doesn't thrive in comfort. It grows in tension, not chaos, but uncertainty. She doesn't long for routine. She wants rhythm, not a schedule, but a pulse. The moment she can predict your next move, she stops feeling drawn to you and starts feeling detached. You became emotional software, dependable but forgettable. But the man who understands this plays a different game. He knows mystery isn't deception. It's maintenance. It's the sacred tension that keeps desire alive. He's not always present, not always reachable. He doesn't reply the instant she messages, not to punish, but to create gravity. Machiavelli once said, "A prince must learn how not to be good when the situation demands it." In the realm of desire, too much goodness becomes passivity. Too much consistency fades into noise. The man with presence moves with intention. He steps back, not to vanish, but to become rare, not to manipulate, but to set the rhythm. Because love is music, and music lives in the spaces between the notes. Too much sound, and it becomes noise. So let her wonder, let her wait, let her silently ask, where is he? Not just physically, but mentally. That space, that unknown, doesn't push her away. It draws her in. Because the man she can't completely define is the one she can't fully dismiss. If you want to be unforgettable, don't give more. Give less, with intent. A compliment that comes once in weeks hits like thunder. A glance held a second longer sparks electricity. A delayed message, sent with calm purpose, becomes poetry. This isn't withholding love. It's directing energy, adjusting frequency, owning your presence. When you give everything up front, she no longer feels the need to earn you, and what isn't earned isn't valued. Women don't drift because they stop loving. They drift because they stop wondering. So be kind, but not constantly available. Be warm, but not always within reach. Be present, but never predictable. Shape the rhythm, and you shape the pull. Because love that's always there fades into the background, but love that's measured, deliberate, and rare becomes irresistible. This isn't manipulation, it's psychological design, and when you master it, you won't chase attention, you'll attract it through your absence. She'll lean in, not because you pushed, but because you stepped back. Part 5. Make your energy expensive. The silent currency of influence. Your energy is like currency. Its worth comes from how scarce it is. The more freely you give it away, the less value it holds. But a man who protects his energy turns quiet moments into something powerful. You don't need to speak louder. You need to show up with intention. Most men try to connect by filling every space. They send more messages, talk excessively, explain themselves and overshare, all under the idea of being open. But openness without boundaries doesn't build trust. It builds expectation, and expectation kills mystery. You may think connection grows through constant effort, but true connection is born through precision. Every look, word, and moment you offer should feel deliberate, not needy, not reactive, not driven by insecurity. When your attention is always on hand, it fades into the background. But when it's earned, it becomes unforgettable. Machiavelli may not have spoken directly about energy, but he understood the power of perception. And perception rules in the world of influence. Access equals value. If anyone can reach you easily, you will respect you deeply, so stop offering yourself like a free sample. You're not here to be consumed, you're here to be recognized. Your time should be valued, your focus selective, your warmth intentional, like fire when it's cold outside. When she senses that your energy is carefully given, she takes notice. She slows down. She starts to wonder, why did he choose me? Instead of, why hasn't he replied? That small shift, that tension between presence and absence, is where influence lives. You don't create desire by being constantly available. You create it by being meaningful, not by withholding love, but by directing it with care. The man who gives too much loses everything, but the man who gives with thought builds intrigue. She may not say it aloud, but she feels it in your pauses, in your rare but genuine compliments, in your measured gaze. You're not chasing, you're choosing. Presence isn't about being seen, it's about being felt. And the man who can be felt even in silence is remembered when he's gone. This isn't coldness, it's clarity, it's not detachment, it's control. When your energy becomes valuable, so does your influence. And the more intentional your presence, the more others rise to meet its level. That's emotional economy, where your attention isn't just a gesture, it's a symbol, where your words aren't noise, they're meaning. You're not chasing attention. You're creating reverence. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to leave a lasting impact on those who've earned it. So stop lowering your worth. You're not a bargain. You're intentional, rare, and worth the price. And what is truly valued is never handed out freely. Part 6. The Detachment Principle. When you can leave, you lead. A man's strength isn't shown by what he clings to. It's revealed in what he can walk away from without losing who he is. Most men stay longer than they should, not because of love, but out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of losing her, fear that without her, they are incomplete. But if Machiavelli were advising the modern man, he'd whisper this: whatever you can't detach from already owns you. And whatever owns you, controls you. She doesn't need you to say it. She can sense it. In how quickly you respond, how much you accommodate, how easily you bend at the slightest sign of distance. She picks up on it, not consciously, but instinctively. And that instinct tells her, this man isn't here to lead, he's here to be chosen. But detachment, true detachment, shifts everything. Not coldness, not indifference, but sovereignty. Detachment is the discipline of caring deeply without losing yourself, of loving completely without pleading, of being present without making her your center. She will test this. She'll pull away, go quiet, create space, not to punish you, but to ask the unspoken question, will you abandon yourself to keep me? Most men do. They over-explain, overcompensate, and downsize their own ambitions just to remain close. And in doing so, they lose the very essence that once attracted her, their presence, their power, their groundedness. But the man who can detach, the one who will leave rather than compromise his self-respect, becomes dangerous in the most compelling way. His strength doesn't lie in how tightly he holds on, but in how little he fears being left. He doesn't argue, he doesn't chase, he doesn't raise his voice. He simply stands firm and lets silence carry his message. I want you, but I don't need you, and I will not trade my integrity for comfort. Such a man can't be guilted, manipulated, or reshaped into something softer just to avoid loss. He stays if the path is aligned. If it's not, he leaves, with peace, not resentment. And here's the irony. When a man is truly willing to walk away, that's when she's most drawn to stay. Because this kind of detachment doesn't feel like withdrawal. It feels like depth. She no longer sees someone revolving around her glow. She sees someone who is the glow, whole, steady, radiant on his own. And something within her stirs, not out of submission, but out of admiration. For the first time, she doesn't feel responsible for your identity. She feels welcomed into a world that remains intact without her. That is where leadership begins. And desire doesn't stem from how tightly you hold her, but from how completely you've claimed yourself. Part 7. Presence. Over-persuasion. The final form of power. She doesn't follow the man who tries to persuade her. She follows the one who never had to. You were taught that saying the right things, showing the right emotions, and balancing charm with commitment would win her over. But here's what was never explained. Real power doesn't speak. It doesn't convince. It doesn't pursue. It simply is. Machiavelli understood. Persuasion is the tool of those lacking presence. The more you try to explain yourself, the less certain you appear. But a man grounded in truth becomes unshakable. He doesn't argue. He aligns. He doesn't perform. He embodies. He doesn't need her to recognize his worth because it's not up for debate. It's not a pitch. It's a presence. When he walks into a room, he doesn't adjust himself. The room shifts around him. He may say little, but his silence holds weight. His stillness draws attention effortlessly, not because he demands it, but because he carries something rare, a self-respect that doesn't falter when it's not validated. He listens without needing approval. He observes without trying to label. He says no without hesitation and yes without fear, because the most magnetic man in the room isn't the loudest. He's the one most anchored in himself. She might question him, test him, even try to shake his foundation, but she won't forget him. Why? Because he didn't try to impress her. He made an impression, not by what he said, but by what he held back. There's a look in his eyes that says, I've already chosen myself. Whether you stay or leave, my center remains unchanged. And that is what draws her in. Not his pursuit, but his posture, not his act, but his presence, because presence is the highest form of power, when your thoughts, your breath, your decisions and your pauses all express the same message. I don't need to be understood. I need to stay aligned. That kind of alignment can't be faked. It can't be memorized. It must be earned. She will sense it, not as pressure, but as center, not as seduction, but as certainty. And she may only realize, when it's too late, that she stood in front of a man who never chased what he couldn't keep without losing himself. This man doesn't need to speak his value. He is the value. And when you become that man, you stop chasing her heart, because you've become the gravity she can't help but orbit, even in silence. Closing message. The crown was never hers to give. If these words resonate not just in your thoughts but deep within you, then you already understand. You were never meant to pursue her. You were meant to become the kind of man. She naturally aligns herself with no need for a crown, no need for an apology, no need for a performance. Only presence. Steady, genuine, uncommon. Because true power doesn't lie in showing that you hold it. It lies in being the man who never has. 2.